So I'm just going to save what we've got here. So if you remember, if you with your annotate out any of those slides, that if you like anything, you just click on the save, you can get a copy of it. So I'm going to do that now and get rid of them and formally start the session. So welcome back to the last of the three. Like a good dinner party. Oh, hang on, I didn't accept my recording. I don't think that matters, but anyway, got it. Like a good dinner party, it takes you ages to get it all organised and whatever, but then it seems to come and go. You have a good time, come and go, and then you're left with all the cleaning up afterwards. So it feels like that for, not the cleaning up bit, but it feels like it's come and gone really quickly. So thank you for being part of these journeys with us. So it's the last part of the journey, and we really want to get you to understand the concepts of good instructional design, not only for what you've done for your own resource, so you'll be able to apply some of what we've talked about, we'll talk about today as part of what you've already done as your design for your own resource, but also when you're looking at maybe getting other people's resources and contextualizing other people's resources. So that's basically the focus on what we're going to focus on today. So we did ask if you could have looked at your planning tool. What were you planning as a resource that we talked about in session 1? And then look at the tools and the techniques we talked about in session 2, and then actually develop the resource and share that through Edmodo. We know that Karen did share it, but it's gone into cyberspace somewhere. And so we might have a little look later, Karen, and see if we can find that. But we know some people have had a chance, maybe not had a chance to get up into Edmodo. So there's a couple of things I want you to do. Is first of all, get your annotate out if you haven't already done so. Have a look at either the stamp or the draw, it doesn't really matter. And when it came to actually developing the tool, what illustration, what little emoji best just illustrates how you felt that went for the developing side of a learning resources, thinking about some of the things we looked at last session. All right, so we've got somebody up already, which is good. And look, you can now, Gay, you might, I was going to say, Gay, what's going to happen when I use my pointer? Yours is going to run away because only one pointer at a time. So I'll try, in fact, I'll use a draw then, so I'm not stealing yours. All right, so it's okay to be in this circle over here. All right, that's okay. It's also okay to be in here or somewhere in between. Good, we've got a little stamp down there. Remember, just grab the mic, switch on the mic if you are having any issues with the annotate. But we might start with the glass half full. So Gay, you're kind of outed yourself here. Are you happy to talk about what worked well developing your resource?
Well, I started off thinking that I was going to use the H5P to work in some activity, because I made some pages in the learning system that we use that were just reading and looking and pictures and sort of things. So then I thought I was going to do an activity, but it hasn't been easy. So I'm sort of in a learning phase, a very steep curve at the moment.
So you're happy with the process, but you've still got some steps to take.
Steps to take. I've got a step to show, but I'm not happy with it yet. Just
what's been the biggest challenge there for you, Heather?
Well, I actually thought I was going to do a drop and drag so that I could test them. And that's been the challenge, just getting that right.
They are a challenge, those, yeah.
Have you worked in H5P? It's very, very good. But
it is good.
It's just a bit of a challenge.
You probably picked the toughest one.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad of that.
You'll find most things easy after that, but the drag and drop, as long as it's got to work out what's your target and what's your drag. And if you use targets that have like maybe a blank spot, that are blank shape, then you can drag your word to that target. It seems to be out, so it sort of works. But yeah, it can be tricky.
I've got it done, but it's just not very pretty yet. It's all right.
Yeah, they're the hard ones to line up. And so when you look at select one of your objects and select it, you can actually see its dimensions, like how far from the left and from the bottom. So if you match one of them up, if they're all over the place going down the page, work out which one is the kind of vertical alignment. Then you can just change all the others to that to get them in line. But it's a bit harder to get them, you know, like the same distance apart.
Yeah.
But well done on jumping straight into H5P. So that's fantastic. So it'll be great to see that outcome. Anybody else want to share what worked well with the development process? Any kind of wins or exciting things or aha moments? Anybody want to share what might not have gone well? So Gay said, yes, she's happy where she's going, but she's still got a little way to go. Anybody in that space? Anybody got any issues they want to discuss with us now? Karen.
We're talking about giving the credit for where the pictures and things came from, and the ones that we have used before, so they're located in an electronic filing cabinet. So going back and trying to find where they were from and giving credit for, I couldn't do it. I tried, I spent half an hour trying to match pictures up. I just couldn't do it. So I take on board what you're saying, but I just couldn't do it with what I had.
Do you know where the pictures originally came from?
No, because they're ones that we use quite a lot. So I'm not sure. People, you know, because we go on.
I was going to say you might have a license for them. You might have bought them, and therefore you don't.
No, they would have been free download photos or pictures that we use. But because we share an electronic filing cabinet, everybody puts things into the files, so it's a bit hard to see, you know, to where they came from.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So just be careful in terms of that, because obviously that we don't tell you this stuff just because we want to tell you this stuff. There's some legal implications of having resources that aren't properly resourced. So yeah, maybe a discussion around a process on how they get loaded in. So I don't know how you put the link in there, but at least if you could put the acknowledgement, so and so on, or whether there's some other.
Karen, I nearly held up a crucifix when you were talking to them because it brought back some shocking memories of a project I was involved with where they supplied images. Well, no, the storyboard had written images and put images in, but they hadn't attributed to them. And so there were lots of them, had to find them. And so we used this can help, but it can also be just as frustrating. But in the chat, I've just put, Google's got a thing called Google Images. And what you can do is drag your image up to it, and it will go looking for that of instances of that image. And sometimes it will help you find where it came from. So if it came from Pixabay or one of those creative sources, but often what happens is it says it's everywhere and it's really hard to find out where it's from. But it can kind of help you with decide, I can't really determine where this is from, but you might find it too.
Yeah, I think that the problem was that I did it before you actually gave us the instruction.
Yeah.
Otherwise I would have done it a different way, but I didn't have time to redo it, so I just have to leave it and take on board what you're saying. I did read up about all of those issues on the internet yesterday, so I'm a bit better informed than I was.
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield.
And that's why if you do have a learning management system, and if you do have one, often what happens when you pull it up, it asks you all of these details, and you can record it then, and it goes into a bank of images. And then when other people pull from that bank of images, that data's already there, and then we're not having to resort it. But I get that there's a legacy that we're working with, and we need to perhaps think proactively from now on, as opposed to trying to rectify what's happened in the past. Karen, did you want to add something? Or somebody had
the thing that I spent most time on was exactly the same. I had pinched a couple of images from the internet, spent an hour trying to find if I could see any copyright-free versions of those images. But also I spent a long time trying to trace back where it came from, because the image had been reused so many times. Decided for one of them I just couldn't attribute it to a particular source, so got rid of it, and then opened Word and used the insert picture and checked the Creative Commons box. So yeah, which is obviously what I should have done in the first place. The other thing I did, there was a bit of discussion last week about using different kinds of, could we use different things to create our resources, and I was very boring. I just put mine in a Word document. But I thought, sorry, children in the background. I thought, oh, I many years ago I'd used things like hot potatoes to create quizzes and things like that, and I thought, oh, I'll do a quick search and see if I can find any of the things that I used to use. Couldn't come across any of them. Looked at a few new ones and thought, oh, I really need to spend a fair bit of time on this. And I used Blackboard and Moodle a lot, so I was kind of used to how they work. And so I kind of thought, oh, if I'm going to try one of these sort of online quizzes, etc., I really need to spend a bit more time. So I haven't looked at the H5, is H5P? I haven't looked at that one though, and that sounds interesting. Maybe I should have a bit of a browse of that.
Fantastic. So yeah, look, as I mentioned just before, sometimes we can't retrospectively go back and fix things, but it sounds like things are front of mind now, that when I'm looking for an image, I should be looking for an image that I know I have some legal and ethical availability to it. And my theory is even if it's royally free or public domain, I still attribute it because I still think that you should still ethically acknowledge. So that's front of mind. And look, it's all about applying the good instructional design principles. So if you're still using Word, most of us still do, that's fine. But if you have a play around in some of these others, that's fantastic as well. All right, any last comments before we move on? All right, now, do we dare, Michael? Let me try giving you a remote and let me mute myself first.
Oh, that's okay. I just tell you because it was a bit disconcerting, the old mirroring last week. That's all good. So yeah, this is what we're going to cover today. We're really going to kind of today give you an opportunity to start to delve into what you think are some benchmarks and apply them. And I think you've been gathering these, and I think you do this anyway. I think any educator does it when they are out scouting for resources. They look at things and start to consider. I was searching for a couple this morning, and it's almost like it's unconscious. You look at it and think, oh, yeah, that'll work, or that wouldn't work for my cohort, or that looks interesting, or oh, God, that's pretty good apart from that. So I'm going to talk a bit more about that. We've come back to some of the benchmarks that you provided us, and then we're going to set you loose on a couple of examples to see what your benchmarking of those resources is against some of the kind of characteristics of good instructional design that you've developed. And that kind of come from ACFI as well. And then we've got there what to do before the next session. Well, that's really going to be about what to do after the session, how you might, I might sow that seed now, like how you might continue the work that you've done in this program, either on your own or in cahoots with some of the people you've met here or within your own provider, so that you can continue to develop your instructional design and continue to explore tools and those kinds of things. So have a think about sort of strategies you might be able to employ, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion about that a bit later on. Oh yeah, also I'm happy for the next one. Thank you. So these are the things that you told us were the characteristics of resources as good practice examples. And we did a brainstorm way back when. And this was a really fantastic list of things that came up. There's a whole range of different things around headings and the organization of information, which we sometimes call the hierarchy of information. So I'm working on a resource at the moment where the client has asked for a heading and then a subheading and then plain text. And that's the hierarchy of information that we kind of use. I don't think we'd want to go any more complex than that. And particularly with our cohort, you might just have the one font all the way through, but that depends a little bit. We also had things like, that they are at the right level and have a connection to, their life or the life that they want to get to. Space for students to write in, and also to perceive and understand and comprehend the activity. White space is really important. You can see that this is a brainstorm, so it's designed to be messy, but as a resource would be quite difficult to follow, to make sense of it. And as facilitators, you probably saw Alison flicking things around as we were doing this, and that's kind of a way of her interpreting it for us as to how it might all hang together and sit there. What about layout? Font size is really important. I mean, things like PowerPoints, they tell us, 28 point is probably minimum. They're authentic. Fonts with good attention to colour, not too much background noise. Particularly, I think someone brought up last time about printing can sometimes be difficult with background. Images of them or other students, so the resource reflects their background, because a lot of the resources we find will be either American or English or Australian, and so you have to work that little bit harder to get in representations of or depictions of people that reflect the cohort that you're working with. I think it creates a bit of a better connection. And then sort of usability, used in everyday life, relatable, easy to explain, and connected to their experience, and they can discover it for themselves. So it's kind of got a bit of intuitiveness to it. So if you give students a little bit of time to kind of look at it, work it out, and try to understand what it's about, then that may be where the discussion can kind of come from. As somebody made this point down here that, it allows for a discussion, or a discussion can kick off how you're going to use that resource and the potential activity that you might then scaffold to. So does anybody want to offer anything extra, or you're pretty happy that that's not a bad list? But I'm sure there might be other things that you've come to think of as you work through this program. All right, well, I'm going to take that you're pretty happy with that.
No.
With that particular list, but I might go to the next slide now. Thank you. So I'll give you a bit of a chance to read this criteria for good instructional design. We've kind of distilled it from your activities and content, and also from kind of our sorts of things. So I'll give you a bit of time to get a bit of a feel for those, and then maybe to ask us if there's any questions, or perhaps if you've not used them before. So I'll give you a moment or two to think about that. So we've got real world examples, visually appealing, good balance between the various elements that make up the page. The visuals got relevance and they're appropriate for the learning group. Sometimes really often find resources that are great, but they've got images of kids in them, and it just really makes it feel as though they're childlike. And I'm going to ask you now to grab one of the stamps. Got a green tick. I've got a question mark under the stamp. I've got a red cross. So I want you to hone in on those stamps. And the green tick is, okay, you agree with that criteria. The question mark is not quite sure whether you agree with the criteria, and the red cross is that you might disagree with it. Or you can use your pen and just tick away. There we go. It probably looks good. So what I often find is that resources that we use often come with activities as well. So there's probably a whole other benchmark for those that relates to these.
Can somebody tell me where I find the tick? I seem to be missing it.
In stamps.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, you got it? Beauty.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if you can't find them, you can just chuck the whole thing up. That's all good. I'm not seeing too many red crosses yet.
I've tried everything.
Well, where are, can you, in your attribution, attributions, your in your little toolbar with the drawings, can you see stamp? It's about the fourth one along. Under annotate. And then you got your mouse, you got text, draw, and then you got stamp. And then you should see like an arrow. Can you see that? You might have some others as well. How you going, Fiona? All right, well, because we only got a small group here, so I'm going to ask each of you to pick one of these and then just tell us why that criteria is important to them, to you. So grab and think about one of those that appeal to you and then tell us why.
I'm going to go with the real world examples because they're the most relatable to the most people.
Perfect. Thank you. It's got a high relevance. So yeah. So that would mean that if some of those other criteria kind of were average or bad, that you would I
was going to go look at the visually appealing and gain the learner's attention, whether I was going to put a question mark on there, actually. That it's got to be easy to read. Sorry, I don't want to take up everybody else's opportunity here, but yeah.
Thank you.
But it's got to be, if it's relatable, it's reaches a wider spectrum of people.
And sometimes real world examples of actual resources that might be used in various parts of life or work aren't well instructionally designed.
No.
So forms and God knows what.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think COVID highlighted how hard some of the forms have been for everybody.
Yeah. In what way do you think?
I just felt that there's so many people who have been overwhelmed trying to fill out the forms to seek assistance.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy process to get grants and all those payments and things like that. And people who haven't ever had to go and get help now have to go and get help. And there's also not helping to the mental wellness of people because everything's overwhelming. So, yeah.
So it becomes a bit of a community development aspect to our work, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Who's next? Who's going to crack next?
Happy.
Good on you.
I think information is clear and easy to understand. I think having to send people things working from home, you have to actually be very clear about what, that's highlighted it for me. Because people are at different levels of understanding, and so it has to be very clear and easy to understand. And that same is if you're working in a class. I think the same thing. Everybody understands things at a different level, so you just have to sort of try your best to make it clear and easy to understand.
Is that because you're no longer physically there to help shepherd them or interpret into that resource?
I just find people misinterpret what you say, even emailing people, which I'm doing an awful lot of. You have to be very clear. And, some people use way too many words just to get something very clear to people. And so I'm finding that if I'm not very clear, I'm having to send them 3 emails instead of 1. So I'm trying to be as clear as possible. And I think the same relates to a class.
So with your communication and that sort of thing, then some of these principles can work, can't they, in terms of that hierarchy of information, using headings to draw people's attention for what they need to do. But have you ever considered using, because it is really difficult, and you see it in assessment tasks that the instructions, just the way people write, it's almost like it's been written by a machine or, an oligarchy. But have you ever considered something like video or audio as a way of getting a message across?
Well, I don't teach, so
Okay.
that's not my thing. So I don't really need an audio as a video or an audio as such. But I can understand you would perhaps in class. I'm only talking from my viewpoint, which I'm not a tutor, so it's not what I do. But yeah, I'm just trying to sort of add some information in here.
So that's great. I mean, you made me think of something I read this morning, actually, which was that someone was asking people how they preferred to get information, because there's apparently been a bit of a rise of voice tools to push messages back and forward versus email. And she's asking, which do you prefer? Would you prefer to read it, or would you prefer to hear it? And her opinion was, well, like, by the time I listened to somebody, I could probably have read it and gone back over things. And if I miss things, I've got to get it right. So yeah, it's interesting kind of field.
I think when even a phone message, sometimes there's background noise, that's bad quality, they're in a bad spot, they're not getting, the technology's not working. Probably printed is a bit easier.
Yeah, that's so true. Thank you, they're great insights. Cheers.
I think with written, you can at least go over it and read it again, even if it's to confirm the time or the information, because sometimes when you read something quickly, you don't get it straight the first time.
Yeah.
And then when you read it again, you think, oh, is that what they're asking? And you've got it to reread if you're...
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I'm thinking, because I've done a little bit of this myself, like we were in an assessment task, say, in vet, that, it's often quite complex. So you make a video of it with you talking to it, and then people ask a question, we can say, well, watch the video first. But for this cohort, maybe it possibly could be useful if this goes on, that they've got some sort of video instruction for a task, or using some of those simple tools like Screencast-O-Matic, to screencast and record a video of you talking through resource really briefly. And so students kind of get that connection to it that you'd probably provide quite informally in a class.
I also think I like the idea of doing some videos, because I think that's much more in tune with the younger age group. They love watching videos and things like that. And
all right.
I'm just reading the chat there from Alison. But
does someone else want to have a...
I would like to have a go at, yeah.
Beauty. Hello, Jane. Welcome aboard. I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you got off the blower at last. We're just discussing some criteria for good resource instructional design that we've condensed from earlier activity. But I'm going to ask one more, if one more of you wants to point out one of these that and why it's important to you. I've heard two really good examples so far.
I would like to speak. Is that okay?
Yeah.
We were talking about information is clear and easy to understand. I think it just gets into the impossible basket, because you ask a student, we've got the option of reading it, we've got the option of reading it to them, and we've got screencasts and videos. And even with the videos, we've had to put the words that the video is saying next to the videos. So the transcript. So you get to the stage where you've got to try and bit of everything. It's not clear. They don't get a context. They don't get the vibe of the person reading it off the screen to them. They don't get the, some people say it's the accent. They haven't got the voice intonation that, you know, gives them the clues. It's a very difficult thing to inform in clear and easy understanding.
You've kind of raised a really good point that video has got its own instructional design kind of thing, and for something it works really quite well. It might not necessarily work so well as kind of a screen reader, but it might work really well to provide an example or an experience or a kind of a story. On the closed captions transcript thing, I mean, that comes back to kind of accessibility, and our resources, particularly those that are kind of web-based, must be accessible and meet particular benchmarks. And one of them for video and audio is that there needs to be an alternate way of being able to perceive and understand them. So understand that. And like a Word document's the easiest way to do that for smaller product providers. But so what are you kind of saying there, do you think then, Heather, in terms of that?
I think you've got to try everything, and all on the one topic mostly.
So if you're thinking about a particular cohort or class, does that influence how you present that information or the way in which you do it?
Definitely. I've worked one-on-one with quite a lot of students with difficulties. So, and each and every one of them's different. So we've just got to provide a broad range. We can't assume that they're going to watch the video and get anything out of it. You know, one boy watched it and said that was hopeless, and another boy says, oh, that, you know, the light bulb went off. So it's just different for different people. We've just got to, you know, have a range, I think.
And you're in the learner management system scene, and one of the tricks we use for that is that we might provide some guide questions before the video, because the video is pretty much a passive medium. You're watching it, unless it's kind of like a demonstration video where you watch and do. Ask some questions before to kind of, you know, warm them up, and then maybe have a quiz afterwards that they have to complete to move on. If you want it to sort of stick or get them thinking about how it might kind of apply.
Yeah, we've actually got stop in the middle option and ask a question right there and then.
That's great. So like an interactive video.
Yeah.
HYP's got a nice one of those too that you can use if you
have.
Check it. Yeah, I thought you would have. I mean, I bet you've been through everything.
Tried everything, yeah.
Can I add?
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say that I agree with Gay because I've tried using videos in one of my classes, and it's for the group whose English is second language. And I realized I had to slow the speed of the video because the students found it difficult to listen to the words at normal speed.
Definitely.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm talking fun because I've got headset and I'm hearing my echo.
Oh, you're hearing yourself. You're coming in okay. And you can't really trust YouTube captions, because I was in a project a couple of years ago. It was a doctor patient consultation and it was great for what I needed. And yet when I turned the closed captions on, the doctor actually said, "I'm going to prescribe you cocaine." I use this video, but don't turn on the caption.
We made videos, especially of our wool and sheep, especially our wool classing. And so we've made little short videos, and so we've put them through YouTube. And so the captions come back, that's a scream laughing because they have no idea what we're talking about.
The captions in YouTube are really good. If you can get into the back end, they're really easy to chuck into your YouTube video.
Yeah, that's great.
Fantastic.
They don't know anything about ewes and lambs and wolves and bellies and stuff. So the words that they use for all of those is really funny. Like your cocaine.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, when you get into YouTube, you can edit those and create your own.
Yeah. I that's how it's good to have it. It's good that you've got that for editing. Saves a lot of typing.
Now, thinking about you making video resources, Hannah, what would be your good principles for short videos like that?
Well, we just set up the, especially the person that's going to give the demonstration in a good spot, but we just have a camera and we run a video, and because the videos are too big a file to put straight onto a learning system, we put them through YouTube to get them smaller, and then we can get the text as well, and just a minute. We just do about a minute
and
on one topic.
Putting them on YouTube is good because it will adjust the amount of internet they need according to the device they're using. So it's great. Thank you. All right. So we've collated this slide into a document, and I'll paste it in for you. So if you want to go to the next slide, please, Alison. There we go. So I put a link to this slide into the chat. Into this document, and it's up on Google Drive, but you can download it. We've made it available. So you can see if you select File, then you'll see a download area there, and then you can choose how you want to download it. So there's a Word document if you want to change it, use it as a bit of a checklist for yourself, or as a plain text or PDF if you wanted to print it and use it. But yeah, so it's highly customizable once it gets to your computer. All right. So question now is, I think we've got a good sense of this, like when a learning resource has good, average or bad instructional design. And actually we're really keen for us to talk about this in the group, so that like I said earlier, most of you have got that sense, but now we've started to attach some criteria to those. And from your own experience that you shared, you've got a really good sense. So we're saying that something is good, it might meet all the criteria that we've set for it. And there's some universal criteria which we share with you. And then there's probably some other things that you've got from your experience, particularly around video, audio, specifically relating to your cohort, adaptability, those kinds of things. It might be average, so it meets some or most of the criteria, but as Jen said, maybe some criteria are more important than others. Can wear some average or average performance in some of the others, like white space, if it's real world and is meeting that authenticity kind of need. Then you've got bad, which means we've met little or none of the criteria. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at a resource now. So this is just a resource that we found, and some of the characteristics I picked up on this one was that it's got fairly small. That's a really good point, Alison. Yeah, that I think that came out of that discussion. Absolutely, that sometimes it's not all or nothing, is it, Alison? It's kind of like you might weigh particular things for your purpose and sacrifice some for the global good. So this is pretty small fonts. It's a little bit busy. It's got really kind of nice images, but I wasn't sure that it was greatly intuitive. But you might have a different point of view. And I'm going to launch a poll if I'm lucky. Yep, here we go. Oh, looks like I've already launched it. I'm going to launch it again. Looks like I've already done it. Here we go. I'll try it again.
Yeah.
Here we go. So I'm going to ask you, can you see that poll on the screen? Hopefully you can. And we're saying, okay, well, this
Can you make it bigger for us?
Can I make it bigger?
Or is that better?
I don't think I can. How about that? Okay. I think it's only bigger at my end. You might be able to resize it.
Yes, you can. It looks like you can grab the corner of it and make it bigger, but yeah. Or are you? What kind of screen have you got? Can you pinch your screen out? Have you got a touch screen, like a tablet or a mobile phone? You can pinch them out. Well, maybe we'll make it easy for you. The first option is good instructional design, so it meets all of the criteria, or at least the essential ones for you. Or middle is average, and the last one's bad, if that helps see what the options are, or hear what the options are. We're talking about here.
The poll's good. It's just the criteria.
Can you guys see the poll? I've only got one so far, one poll. Here we go.
Yeah, I'd have to say that I'm finding it hard to read.
The poll?
No,
No.
the
The designs. Yeah, okay.
the design.
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit small. Actually,
Yeah.
got a link to it somewhere.
But isn't
making out what they are.
Yeah, isn't it appropriate that you wouldn't be using this sort of thing on digital learning platform?
Yep.
Isn't that what we're asking? Is it a good tool for a digital platform?
Probably not so much that. But it's an important. That's an important consideration, and we're really sort of saying this is a good example of instructional design. But what you've applied some of the
criteria,
benchmarks against it, and said that would be an important consideration for you. It would probably need to be totally adapted, wouldn't it? Do you think?
It would be.
Right. So, all right, I think we've got everybody now. Alice and I can't vote, so we can't pump it up. Hopefully you can see the results. Now, I think I turned it off. Here we go. So no one said this was good, which is interesting. So we've got a couple of you who said it was average. So does one of you want to take the mic and tell us why you thought it was average?
I think the concept of, you can probably see that, like on number 3, they want to know that there's 3 goes into 300 grams, and those sorts of things that you could figure out. You're still using division, but I just find it really hard to read.
Yep. Okay. Now we had someone say bad existing design. It should be instructional design. I should have said there. I think I stuffed my file up. So it's the person who voted that way. Want to quickly talk about that?
I don't know what to do. It hasn't got a heading or it says calculate the weight. I don't understand it.
So looking at this, it's not something that you could use.
No.
And your point about you needing it to be in another format is...
I need more information, yes.
Yeah. Hey, so on your point about the online, but not suitable for online learning, do you think there are different instructional design principles for, say, what we're looking at here and online?
Well,
One thing, sorry.
You go.
Thanks. Yeah. One thing I realized with documents like that using for online, the images has to be clear. And like for number 6, it says 250 grams. It looks like a book, but then the image next to it looks like a bread loaf. So I'm not sure what. Yeah.
Yeah, I must admit, I found this one a bit confusing to understand what each of those things represented.
Yeah.
It's a sack of something. Some sort of money. I don't know. So
from where I'm sitting, it looks like toast or something. Yeah, I just can't quite make out what they are.
Okay. All right. So let's have a look at another one. So Alison, if you go forward to the next slide. There we go. And what we'll do is we'll relaunch the poll. I won't say much about this one. I think we'll just let you loose on it. So I've put a new poll up for you. I'll give you a moment or two to think about this one. It's a great thing about this, so many different opinions. I think I've got one more of you. So from the top, good instructional design, average, and bad.
My major comment for this one is it's got the C with the stroke through it, and I don't write that way for sense, I don't think.
I like the gradient through the center on a kind of an angle.
Yeah, I don't use that notation, I don't think. I don't.
No.
Did you vote bad?
No, I didn't. I voted average.
Okay, so someone voted bad. Let's hear from them.
I feel like I'm always saying something. Yes,
good.
it's not Australian because of the sense, but the text on that background is not good, and it's not big enough.
Yep, that's fair enough. I put the link in there. It's probably a bit easier to read on the link there, but I see your point about the gradient there. Yep. So
I actually don't like the contrasting colours because I think the green is very hard to read.
It is. It's terrible.
Yeah. Oh, the text in the yeah.
Or even the text all round. The size of the text isn't good enough either.
That's true. And the font color.
Yeah, the font,
the white apples and lemons and berries. I had to zoom in.
Yeah. I mean, even on a big screen, it's difficult to read, and it's a little bit random. Why? So some of that numbers are in green.
I have no idea, and it's in pounds, which is not Australian. You couldn't.
They're the lowest prices. The green ones are the bargain. So if you only want to go to one store, Anna's going to be your best because she's got the cheapest lemons.
Okay.
Cheapest
see, I wouldn't have deduced that. I would have just.
You probably want to ask the students.
Not hard.
Okay. So someone said it's good instructional design. Can you take us through your reasoning there? And remember, there's no right or wrong answers here. It's all about your perception.
I said good, and the reasons for that are some of the things that people have said are bad. I like the fact that it highlighted in green which ones were the cheapest prices. Hold on. Sorry. I like the fact that it highlighted which were the cheapest prices, so that you could quickly compare. To me, that flagged up as obvious. I did see that it's obviously an American one, but I didn't see that as a major issue because I thought the idea behind it was quite clear to me. But that's in direct contrast to what some of the other people said. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I've run a similar activity to this years ago when we were when I taught in that area, and but we got students to research themselves, mainly on catalogues, using catalogues. But we eventually did an excursion into the supermarket. So there's kind of there's a bit of capacity to adapt this one, I think. All right, beauty. Okay, sounds like you're all getting, or you all are pretty savvy in terms of what your thinking is around benchmarks and things. So now we're going to do an activity, and we're going to do a breakout room activity.
All right, so we've had some good discussions. Yet my microphone's on. Had some good discussions, and it's interesting that they depends on what your focal point is as to, or the activity. I'm thinking it's the activity and who you're dealing with. So you, the activity, and your learners can determine whether or not you think that's good, average, or bad. What we're going to do is, in a moment, we'll put you into 3 breakout rooms. So we've got 3 different resources. So the first thing we're going to do is give you some instructions about the breakout room and what to do in the breakout room. When we get you in the breakout room, I'll then come in and drop a link in the chat. And as a group, you can either, one person can share the screen and you can all look at it together, or you can look at it on your individual screens. So we can't share slides in the breakout room. So the first thing, remember, when you get into the breakout room is open the chat, because the instructions we're going to give you are going to be there, and I'm going to come around and give you your particular resource to look at. You'll also need the criteria for good resource instructional design. So make sure you've got that available to you as well. So get into the chat. Sorry, get into the breakout room, open up the chat, relax, talk to each other for a little while you're waiting for me to come around and give you your particular resource. You may want to discuss the actual checklist as you're going there, but I'll only be a couple of seconds. It might feel like I'm a long time, but I'm only usually about 5 or 6 seconds between the rooms. Then when you get in the actual, you get your actual resource, then the activity is to look at the resource, look at the instructional design checklist and do a little comparison, you know, so look at each of the criteria and discuss whether you think it meets that particular criteria. So you're using the checklist to evaluate the resource. So before Michael or I open up the breakout rooms, questions about what you're going to do when you get in there. Excellent. Mark, do you want me to build them? Build up. Got it.
Hey, I've got the breakout rooms ready to go.
Oh yeah, beautiful, gorgeous, thank you. So give me a couple of seconds to get into your room and I'll look out in the chat. That'll give you the link to your resource. In the meantime, make sure you've got your good resource instructional design checklist available. So whenever you're ready, Mark, please launch.
Okay, fire away now. You should get an invite. And when you see the invite, all you need to do is just join it.
All right, there's 2 rooms. All right.
Oh, now I've created 2. Should I have created 3 rooms?
That's right. Maybe I might move Jowett to both of her to room 2. So Jowett, when you're ready, she might be doing some instructional stuff with it. So I might jump in and get these guys into their resource. So we'll just use the 2 of the 3 resources. Oh, Jowett's just taken one of her identities in. All right. Oops, that's the wrong one. I don't want that one. I want this one.
Okay, they're all in there now, mate.
Yep. Let me just.
So I'll give you a minute or 2 to do that and I'll flick around.
Yeah, just let me, there I am. I can just join here. Beautiful.
All right. Okay. Okay. So
I would say it's quite highbrow.
Okay, highbrow. So not clear enough for everyday learners.
No.
Okay. I'll write this down.
Yep.
Enough for everyone. Okay. All right. What about the second one?
What's the second question?
Oh, sorry. Visually appealing and gains the learner's attention.
No.
No. Okay.
No, bad.
So it's bad. Okay. What about number 3? Just we can always come back to them. Number 3 is right balance between white space, text and visuals, images, graphs, charts and icons.
Bad.
Bad.
I just think the whole thing is overwhelming.
Overwhelming. Okay, I'll write that down. Overwhelming to the learner.
Yep.
Learner. Okay. Number 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. Visuals are relevant to the learning activity learner group.
No.
No. Okay. Number 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Information is clear and easy to understand.
No.
So that was a no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Uses a single simple font type. Example, Arial, Calibri.
Oh, no.
No. Okay.
No.
7. Use.
Right. Have we got another one to look at, or is that it?
I thought it was just the one.
I thought it was just 1, 2. Let's have a look. Go back to the chat and see.
There's
Yeah,
2
it's just the
links
one.
there.
Oh, no.
But I think they're both the
Yeah.
same.
Are they?
They are.
They
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
They're both the same. Yeah.
Okay, so that's it.
So
So generally, we'd say it's average.
again, being me, I think it's poor. If just on it, you have to modify it so much.
Yeah, I think you could even just the information that's on it, if you wrote that down just on a bit of paper, I think you could even come up with 5 better tips, never mind everything else. But I'm a bit unconvinced by the information that it's giving, never mind the pictures and the font and all that kind of information as well.
Yeah, and the order of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time I look at it, it goes down at another.
Yes.
I think you guys have had a chance to review all of the criteria.
Yes, we went through the list.
Excellent. What good job. I'm going to stop the breakout rooms, close the breakout rooms, I should say.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Great job. Bit tricky at the beginning, maybe. You're trying to get the couple of tabs where you had the checklist and you had the so this is where technology doesn't always work in your favor. If you had a physical checklist, maybe something to think about from Michael. Maybe we could have emailed it to you earlier on and said, you might want to do a download and print it if you had that facility as one option. Might have made it a bit easier, but in the end, as a group, you worked it out and you did a fantastic job. So well done. So a couple of things, and let's start with. Sorry, let me just start by. I think this is breakout room 2. It was, I think, Karen and Gay and thank you, was in that room. So, Sandra, you did some of the recording. Do you want to do a little report back about using the checklist? Maybe start with what was good about it? Was there anything good about? I shouldn't infer. Was there anything good about this resource that you felt met some of those instructional design principles? Sandra, you're on mute if you're talking.
Sorry. The only thing that we really found that was particularly good is there was a file naming. The rest of it we weren't particularly impressed. I was actually doing the recording, and my person was doing the looking at the article, so we were just going backwards and forwards so we could actually manage.
We were doing the age, Alison.
Yeah, we did the age.
Sorry, I got my rooms mixed up. So, all right. Sorry, I'm overloading here. So, excuse me. Jen and Sandra did the age. I said one thing and they went for another there. Jen and Sandra did the age. So I'll just pop that in the chat so the other group can have a quick look at it as well. So they did well in the naming convention. Any comments about what you would ask them to improve on if you had the opportunity to do that?
Well, we talked about, I can only go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because I was having to skip backwards and forwards. We thought it was a little bit highbrow, not clear enough for everyone. And well, the number 3 was overwhelming, a bit overwhelming for the learner, so it wasn't great. What else? It's just not, we just found it wasn't a great learning resource.
No.
I think that's earlier points. Jen, did you want to add to any of those?
Yeah, I teach infection control, and as a resource, I talk about the COVID numbers and incorporate quite a bit of COVID discussion so that it's relative to infection control. And sorry, I would not use any of that resource. I think of all my learners, none of them would have coped with using that as a resource.
Yeah, all right, fair enough.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Opinion.
It's the idea of this is that you've got some criteria. So when you're, instead of just saying, I don't like this, right? And people go, okay, well, you don't like it. That's your opinion. But we've gone, okay, here's some criteria by which you should be identify what's a good or at least an average resource. And if you've got one, which is the naming convention, right? And you can say, well, they've named the file right, but they haven't been very clear about this and they haven't been very clear about that. Then your voice has a bit more weight in it when you're making decisions about what it is.
Because for something like this, you're trying to get the message across. You're trying to convey important message with this particular subject. And I don't believe that you could get the right information just by sort of looking at it. And yeah, it's not written in simple language. It's not for everyone. And yeah.
Fantastic. Beautiful.
I think they would just pass over it and not read it. And we need people to read the information.
So with
and
that
take
checklist,
on board the information that it's trying to convey. Yeah.
What if you were teaching something like numeracy and you were focusing not so much on COVID, but you're focusing, say, on visual presentation information, graphs, proportions, those kinds of things?
I still think it's too overwhelming for any of the learners that I would have. Yep.
Those graphs at night on the ABC TV, and for me, I can understand it, but then, you know, I'm not learning numeracy and literacy. Yeah.
That's right.
So remember, the checklist is there for you to make some of those reasonably objective, because we've seen that this obviously is a context and a learner decisions that you're making when you're ticking them off. You might take a section of that. So you might go, okay, there's no way I'd send my students to that site because it's trying to too many messages for too many people. But that little bit of it might be useful. That ticks the boxes, so you might be able to use it for that.
I also found that they have grey text, and I find that harder to read as well. All in all, it was a great example for this, but yeah, would you, either of you, use it? Alison,
as I said, I'm finding a lot of the COVID stuff, and I've got reasonably good literacy skills and stuff. I find a lot of them. So for me, I would go, okay, that part of it would be really useful, and put that as a resource, as opposed to, or saying when you click on the link, go and find that part of the resource, so that they just look at one part of it. That's how I would use it. All right, so the other group then, you guys had a much more simplified visual, right? The whole thing. I don't have to give the other group the link because you can see everything there. So again, sorry for mixing it up. So I think I got the names right this time though. Gay, Karen and Jane, you guys were in that room. What were the good, what did you tick as, yes, this might fit the criteria? Any criteria that worked well? Who's going to report?
Yeah, I don't like to, Jane, can you report? Or I did do a list. Yeah. I did the criteria list, if that helps.
Yep. So maybe Gay, if you start. And so what first, tell us first of all, what were there any that you said good or average?
Yes, we said visually appealing at the first look, it would get attention. And we also said that we can use it in different learning modes, attribute it to the origin and appropriate file, we thought. And that was about it. We didn't like much of the actual content or how the images or any of the colour or the font or the size.
So again, depending on what you're going to use for, so maybe Jane or Karen, did you guys want to add anything from your perspective in terms of the referencing to the checklist? Jane?
Well, actually, some of the images there, the fact that it was all capital letters. We spoke about capital letters being shouting. Sorry, I've got background noise going on here. Is that okay? Is it coming through?
Oh, not enough for me to go, oh, what was that? So no, okay. I didn't know. It's not distracting from what you're saying.
We also spoke about the image of the male. We were not sure exactly what that male was doing. He looked very angry as opposed to being hungry. And there was no real indication that he was hungry. Also, he was a male. And then we identified the hands being a suit, cuff, shirt and tie, handing out money. And I suppose a lot of the community or the cohorts that we work with are particularly females, and they were doing the shopping as opposed to the males handing out the money, and we didn't think that was a particularly good thing anyway, males handing out the money. What else did we come up with? The color, the background and the white text doesn't work particularly well, and especially if somebody was visually impaired, that might be very challenging for them. Are there any others that I've missed?
Points there, but we filter by what's relevant to us. So those points that you're making about, like, you assume that's a male's hand in terms of the being a suit and so on is really important. So, a quick glance at that, you kind of go, okay, well, that's not actually related to me. It looks like it's something that it's not, I can adjust to. So adjusting the images to meet the audience's needs is really important. Karen, did you want to add anything? It doesn't matter if you've got noise in the background.
One of the things that struck me is the way that it's laid out. It kind of seems like the information is in the wrong order. I suppose because it's not supposed to be like a list, if you like, but you go back and across the page. And so make a list before you go is the very last thing, whereas I would have said that should be the first thing. So it just looked like it was a little bit out of order.
There's a little part on there, and it says buy healthy food because it's cheaper. And one of the things that is often levelled is that a lot of people have so much junk food because healthy food is dearer than rubbish. 2-minute noodles, everyone lived on 2-minute noodles at uni for a reason, because they were cheap. Yeah.
So I would have in season, if you buy in season food. That's how I trained my partner. And I'm like that. If it's in season, if it's cheaper, it's in season. So therefore go for those kinds of ones if you can. Yeah. Any last comments then around the actual resources themselves. What about the checklist? Was the checklist a good guide? Is there something we should adjust or change on that checklist? You don't have to answer now, but have a little think about it.
I think when we went through the checklist, I think it was, Gay, did you say we'd kind of scored almost, if you put equal weight on everything, we kind of scored average, but the more and more we talked about it, the lower and lower we felt our resource to be in our estimation of it. So I wonder if part of it's also about thinking that sections of the checklist don't necessarily all carry equal weight. Some things are more important than others.
Yep. So I think that's a really good point. So we've got criteria, and it's important, as I said, to have criteria by which you're judging, as opposed to I don't like, all right? Because I don't like is subjective, and it's all right to say that, but when you're going to aim to influence other people, so you may have that opinion yourself, but if you're going to try and influence other people in terms of whether they, how they look at a resource or how they design a resource, you need to have something that's less subjective. So we've tried to give you some, they're not totally objective, but some objective things to look at, and so you can talk in those terms. But I think, Karen, what I got from you was you need to look at it holistically. You can't go, oh right, okay, it's average, let's all go. No, all right, so when it looks like it's all average, but in a holistic way, we think the order is really more important, and that people can read it if we know we've got learners who've got a visual impairment. Yeah? So we've got to adjust it to the criteria to our particular cohort. Anybody else want to add anything or around the criteria list, the list that we've got? Beautiful. All right. So thank you so much. That was a really good conversation, and it really highlights that you really have to think about your learner cohort, you as a teacher and a learner, which is how we started the whole process, you as the learner, and then therefore the teacher as well. The learner cohort and the context of the learning makes a difference when you're picking up somebody else's resource. But you should be able to use other people's resources, but you will need to contextualize them or give really clear instructions about what you're going to do with somebody else's resource. So think about the one that you've designed, the learning resource that you've designed and developed, or nearly developed, or thinking about developing.
Yep.
And that criteria we've given you, that list, is there one thing that you would change now based on the use of that list and your resource? So please either feel free to use the text in the annotate, or does anybody want to talk to something that they now go, okay, now I've reviewed others and I've used this checklist, I think I might adjust this. Give that a moment to have a think.
I would, with my questions, I would actually add in some visuals in there now as well.
So that may adjust your design, because visuals can take up a bit of space. Jane, are you using a Word document?
Yes, Word doc.
Sometimes when I do it, I use a table. It's probably, I've got to be careful with using tables in terms of web accessibility, but if it's a handout, I put a table in, and then it makes it easier to set the picture in a convenient, consistent way, and then have the text next
Actually, Alison, are there training programs that you can do to be able to create documents? I find I get very frustrated in front of the computer, really, to the point of steam sometimes coming out of ears. Are there ways and means around that?
So some
Where
of it
would you direct me to go is basically what I'm asking.
Unless Michael's got a one off the shelf thing. So normally what I do is test and trial some of the things. So some of it comes, unless anybody else, please put it in the chat or grab the battery and so on. And when we do the intermediates, so we're going to talk to you before we go, we're going to look at some of the other types of resources. So sometimes you look at the templates. So, when you go to Word and you go new document, it lists a whole range of templates, and that might give you a starting point. You know, they might already have some images in the place. So at least you've got a visual of, okay, that's how I'd like it to look. And therefore I just need to replace or copy some of those things. That's normally how I start. You know, borrow somebody else's idea and build on it is what I do. Okay, so yep, so add more visuals, somebody else, so either Jane, that's you, or somebody else is going in there. So have a look at that criteria, have a look at what you've developed. Would you give each of those criteria the good, the average, or the bad? And obviously if you're giving any of them the bad, you might need to review what you're doing in that space. So if anybody's typing on the board on the screen now, please feel free to pop it up. I'm going to just close this up in a minute and give you the next bit. So I'll give you 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. There we go. Got it in there. Well done, Gay. Yeah, and ideally, again, so we all talk ideally, if you can allow that space so that that what you're wanting to focus in on is focusable, not mashed up in lots of other things. So well done.
Oh,
sorry. Did you want to get something up there?
Quate has just put into the chat her annotate's not working.
I'll add a checklist. Thank you.
And she wants a checklist added.
Checklist. All right, beautiful. So let me just grab that and I'll be able to splice those together. And
can Mick explain ALT tags?
Alt tags. So maybe what we'll do is we'll just quickly finish these acts and then we'll talk about alt tags. Or Mick, if you've got an because we want to finish on time, if you've got any links, pop them in there. I'm just going to grab this one and I'll splice them together when we put them together.
And alt tags is pretty much predominantly for like a screen reader. So if a screen reader is reading a web page, it gets to an image, you can't read that. So when we put an image in, we can attach an alt tag to it. So it's okay if it's a picture, you can say this is a photograph of blah, blah, blah. But if it's a chart, it's a bit more difficult. You have to really explain the tendency. So it might be just a sentence or two. And I noticed in Word, the latest version of Word, or when you put an image in, you can add an alt tag. So when if you use a screen reader, or if you use the reading function, read aloud function that's in Word, it will read that alt tag to you as well. That's really for people who are kind of visually impaired, but you can get around that. So I'll see if I can dig up some information for you.
Be great. So then the other thing that we want to focus in on today was this finding and contextualizing an existing resource. So again, repurpose. Is there something that you can already use? You're not having to develop all of the time from scratch because it's quite time consuming if you follow the instructional design process. So obviously the first thing you'll need to do is make sure that you've clearly identified, you've done the analysis bit, you've identified what's the learning need, what's the kind of learning resource that I need for the learning activities that I'll do. So all those things we did in those planning documents, who's my learner cohort? And then finding it, where do you go now? Where do you find existing resources now to use with your students? Is there any go-to spaces that you might go to? Or you're building them all from scratch?
I've been using some of mine off the WorkSafe website.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep. So going to what government, what departments, or other educational organisations, I usually tap into them really, really well. Fantastic. Thank you, Michael.
Kahoots is really good.
Sorry, Gay?
You can massage your Kahoots pretty quickly.
Okay. Repurpose what you already have, is what you're saying,
yeah.
Gay?
Yeah, because they share their resources. It's really easy to get a Kahoots going without much modification.
So look at where they might already have like a community of people that are sharing their resources.
Thousands of them, thousands. Yeah, it's great.
Is it? Oh, I'll have to have another look.
That's really interesting because I think Edmodo's like that too. There's kind of lessons in there you can reuse. But yeah, the Kahoot one's amazing.
Quail says, I used the free website. I forgot the name. It starts with G.
So take your time, Koala. If you don't get it while we're together, you can pop it into Edmodo. Anywhere else you go source resources from? So some of the ones we thought about maybe that you work together with other teachers. So, you know, there's this bank of resources that you can gather by talking to other educators who teach in similar area to you.
ASPIC, Learn Local has quite a bit to share too. You're working for a Learn Local group.
So have a look, have a look, talk to people, ask, put it out there. If you're on social media, put it out to your social media network. So that's the other teachers online. So, you know, if you ask people and they've got it, often they'll give it to you. Educators are very, very generous people. All right, I'm conscious that we're nearly at the end, so I'm just going to switch through and keep moving. So the other thing we want you to think about, this is the wrap up of the session, the 3 sessions. How are you going to continue to develop your instructional design or your, you know, critiquing of other resources, so developing your own resources or taking somebody else's resources and using them or contextualizing them? How are you going to continue to do that beyond these sessions? What's some of the strategies you might use? Ah, yeah, learners as a resource, but asking. So I'm just looking at what Nick's written in the chat there. Oh, thanks. Okay.
Yes, yes. I've used that global one too. It's terrific.
Thank you, Koa. So what are you going to do to maintain your PD to continue to think about, apply good instructional design or principles to your...
Alison, something I'd like to see is peer-to-peer support and maybe mentoring within the ACFI and Learn Local area, because sometimes I feel quite isolated. You know, you tend to go off with your kit out to somewhere and do your thing and provide all your documentation back to the office, and that's it. You don't necessarily have a great deal of connection. So I don't know whether
that in your
anybody
feedback.
else feels
So
that
what
way.
I was going to say is that you will be asked to complete some feedback forms or feedback form. So pop that in there. Pop that in there. But
Okay.
I will give you some suggestions on how you might do that as an individual. So reaching out to other people. So okay, beautiful. So use the checklist, add some more criteria. Yep. So remember, download your own copy of that so you can get access and manipulate it how you need to. Beautiful. All right. So, all right, I'm going to wrap up because I can see Gay. Thank you so much, Gay, for your contributions. Watch out. We'll do a follow-up email and stuff in Edmodo as to what to do to wrap up this session. Let me just
Thanks, Gay. Thanks for all your comments. They've been terrific.
Been fantastic.
Bye, Gay.
And a wealth of information.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
So just have a quick look if you want to grab the stamp and give us the tick and so on. So Jane, the way I do it for me is I open up a web browser. Twitter's always what opens up. I don't open up to a blank Google search engine. I open up to a Twitter account that I follow other educators like me. And so I can see what's happening and what resources they share. I go to other PD, but I also reach out to people like in my network, like Michael, and ask if they want to do crazy things together, like do this program, and we're doing another program. So I often will go out and ask other people, do you want to look at something together as well? So look for things that are in line. So Twitter, Facebook, there's a lot of groups in Facebook for educators. LinkedIn, another great place for educators. So have a look in those spaces, and subscribe to emails is the other thing I do. So I'll just be quiet. Hopefully you've got.
Yep, I subscribe to emails and as many training sessions as I can. I've got an amazing co-worker who's got a wealth of experience. So if I need advice, I can go to her because I'm very new to this. I've been doing this now a year, and they get me to fill in all sorts of classes when somebody's sick, as well as do what I do.
So yeah, tap into what's out there, but also reach out, right? So there's some of it about there's some of it about they're bringing it to you, but you reach out to others. You know, maybe once a month you have a virtual catch up with a couple of people who are similar to you, but you need that network needs to be built. You've got some of the people you can build it with in this group. You've got the Edmodo group, you know, that you can use as well. So I'm just going to say this and we'll wrap it up. Michael, I'll hand it across to you to see if we can get through these last couple of things promptly. If you have to go because we are over time, then we understand, but we'll just wrap it up quickly and talk to you.
Yeah, just a really quick bit of feedback for us, Philly, just to see what the kind of main takeaways have been for you guys, like from this program. You know, perhaps 1 or 2 things that have been useful for you, and you know, any opportunity for you to perhaps talk about how we could improve it or our performance. You can do that in the formal survey that will come to you. Yeah, so what will you take away from this? You can use the chat, or you can pop it up on the whiteboard with some text. You can use a stamp. Just one takeaway each. It might be people you've met. But like while you're doing that, look, fantastic. Thank you very much for sticking with us and for submitting things and feedback that you provided with each other and your experience that you brought to us. It's been really rewarding for me. So thank you all for sharing all that experience and knowledge.
Oh, it's been a terrific course. I've really enjoyed it. I had a lot of trouble getting on with the internet. I've also got somebody who is working from home, and we've got to compete with Zoom calls and meetings and all those sorts of things as well. It's been really hard to get on, but I've really enjoyed it, and fantastic. I enjoy learning from other people.
Great, cheers.
Now tomorrow is the employability skills.
Yes.
I'm going to have to leave halfway through it tomorrow because I've got to go to a funeral.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes. So yes.
Okay. Well, that's all. We'll give you the recording.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good on you, Jen.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. So
great course. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been great to meet everybody, and I've liked that it's been smaller and more personalised. So it's sort of been a bit more one-on-one. Yeah, it's been terrific. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
So look,
That's
really,
true. Thank you
now
so much.
we're probably just looking for you to complete just that last activity. We don't actually have an activity for this week, have we, Alison? So if you want to tidy up I think all of you that in the room have completed and submitted initial templates and plans.
Oh, I've got one, but I've got to upload it, and I've got to figure out how to upload it.
Great. Well, you see, when you get to the message, you'll see a little attachment tool on the bottom. Hit that, and you'll be able to attach as many files as you like.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, it's been a bit overwhelming at this end. So
yeah. I understand. Great.
All right. Thank you very much.
So once you've completed the final post, we'll inform Val of that 6 of you completed, and they'll give you a certificate of participation for this particular program. And it's at that point that they'll survey you also about your feedback around the conduct and quality of the presentations.
It's been excellent.
Thank you.
I've got a lot out of it. Thank you.
Yeah, I have too. It's been great.
Yeah, me too. And I've loved that it was a small group.
Yeah, that's true.
Really
that helps.
Beneficial. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps you get to know each other a little bit better, doesn't it? I think in a large group. And I think some of you are training for the intermediate, aren't you?
Yes.
So we might have to get a special breakout room session for you to get back together as a gang and keep up the contact.
That helps us continue our network too.
That's true.
So yeah, no, that's good. Yes, I've signed up for everything.
Oh, beauty.
Yes.
You'll be running them next year.
Shari's changing, Shari's leaving us. So
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
These ones, this particular course has been coming on my days off. So yeah,